morning, I can actually just say good morning, Vanita, without you saying good morning via text or something like that.
Good morning, everybody, or good evening, whoever's listening, wherever they're listening.
Yeah, probably the ones from South Africa is getting ready for bed.
Yes. Thank you for
So
having me, Jan.
I just want to put it out there. I think I've got a banner for Vanita. Actually, let me just see.
Yeah, it was cool.
You are a registered immigration advisor with A2NZ Immigration. So if you want to talk to Vanita, get hold of admin@immigratenz.net. Is that still right?
No, it's because our email changed, so it's admin at immigration, at a2nz-immigration.com.
Admin at
Admin at a2nz-immigration.com.
immigration.com. Okay.
Yeah.
I think we've got it right now. So hopefully we've got it right. And we can scroll that on the screen for whoever wants to check that. Admin at
Perfect.
a2nzimmigration.com.
Yes.
Okay. So Vanita, a lot of things has happened. I don't always know if I've got to say good things or bad things. Because
I
everything
think
that
it's a
changed.
good thing. It's a very good thing, and it's very obtainable for a lot of people out there. So I know I've seen some negative comments going, oh, and initially we thought it was just for rich people, but no, it's for everybody, to be honest.
It's not for rich people only.
No. And when you look at so we're talking, so for the audience out there, we're talking about the Parent Boost Visitor Visa, where they can get a visitor visa for 5 years to come and stay, and they can renew it for an additional 5 years. So pretty much you're looking at a total of 10 years. So looking at the income, there's three lots of incomes.
Can I just, while we're on this 5 year,
Yeah.
what happens thereafter?
So the thing is, it's a temporary visa. It's no pathway to residence, right?
Okay.
So if parents that have, for instance, an expression of interest in and they're waiting, or they under the parent retirement category, and they're just waiting for things to process, they can come through on this visa and live here for that period of time while they're waiting. So that's actually a really good thing for a lot of parents that have this uncertainty and the queues being so long. With the parent category, there's only 2,500 per year that's selected from from the expression of interest pool. So this visa has no pool. You can apply for it, and it will open in September, by the way. End of September, September 29th is when it will open.
Okay.
So that's what we're looking at. So in terms of supporting somebody for the visa, sorry, Jan, I know you want to say something.
No. Good.
There's three ways you can support them. Either the New Zealand citizen or the New Zealand resident in New Zealand can sponsor them, okay? And looking at the sponsorship, if you're looking at one parent that you want to sponsor, you're looking at earning like a salary of just under 70,000, because they talk about median wage. And the median wage currently, or what they're looking at, is $33.56. Okay, per hour.
Between two of us, we earn $70,000, but not one of us. Will that also work?
It should work as well, because you're only sponsoring one parent. But say, for instance, you want to sponsor two parents, that's when you need to actually start earning the 1.5, and then it goes up by 0.5 at a time. So the thing is, though, that you don't need to rely on your spouse or your partner to be able to be earning that additional income. You can also have another sibling where you can draw on to be able to do that. So say, for instance, you have two siblings that are New Zealand citizens or residents, and you want to sponsor both parents to come in, both siblings can do that and combine the income.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting, and that gives me a bit of a wider scope of people that are allowed in there.
Correct, yes. When you're saying allowed in, you're talking about who can sponsor? A wider scope of who?
Who's got the money to sponsor?
Yes, that's right. So also, like, say, for instance, you want to sponsor your wife's parents, that's 2 seats, and your parents, that's 2 seats, then it goes up by 0.5. So you need to sort of work out how that's going to happen and what that's going to look like. There's no age for it, which is good. Okay, so you can, if you're eligible, you meet all the requiremanents, you can do that. The other remuneration is if you don't earn that amount of money, then your parents need to earn the superannuation equivalent for New Zealand. Or if you don't earn that, if they earn the equivalent, then yes, they can come in on their own sort of finances. Or the last one is if they have assets of like 250 and over, then they can come in on that. So they don't need to rely on US sponsorship. However, you need to support that visa to show that you are a citizen or resident.
So just a quick question from my side: the $200,000 that the parents got to have, if they sponsor themselves, basically, would that money need to be in New Zealand or have to come to New Zealand?
No. So just to make it clear for the audience out there, the policy is not out with all the detail of how the evidence and the monies need to be in there. But looking at the temporary retirement category and looking at the parent retirement category, you need to show that you have access to that money. So that money can be in the form of dividends, shares, rental property that you're owning, and so on, that the money is available in the bank account. And it needs to be easily accessible. That's what they say. Now, looking at it as well, I know visitors can't open a bank account. I'm thinking that on this visa, they would be able to open a bank account because they would need to access funds somehow for that period of time. But again, as I said, the policy is not out. So what I'm saying, saying it with a disclaimer, until the policy is out, they will be able to. But looking at it, it's going to be quite a flexible policy for a lot of people, especially living for that time.
So things could still change.
I don't think it will change for the worst. It won't change for the worst. It will, when the policy is out, we'll know for sure exactly what needs to happen. Now, the processing time for this visa, so immigration are saying it's going to take a minimum of about 4 months. And also, because there's so many checks in place, they need to actually be able to, could be longer. And also with the influx of applications and so on that may come through. So just be aware that that's how long you're looking at. Now, one important thing is, while you are issued a 5-year visa, there's a health check at the 3-year mark. Now, important, this visa can only be applied for when you're offshore. You cannot be onshore and apply for the visa, just like the parent-grandparent visitor visa. So the first part is you need to be offshore, you get your 5 years, but there's a health check at the 3-year mark. You have to be offshore for that health check. And you need to meet the health check again at the 3-year mark. If you don't, immigration can cancel your visa.
Okay.
And it's easier for them to do that when you're offshore because there's no obligations where you become unlawful or anything like that. So that's the important part for this visa. Now I'm thinking, so you need to meet health and you need to meet character, meaning you need to do police checks. And I'm thinking at that 3-year mark, you may need to do a police check again as well, but I'm unsure of that.
While you are there.
For the South African one I'm talking about, where you'd have to do a police check, So but the thing is, for that 3rd year, you have to be offshore again. So offshore when you start, offshore in that 3rd year to get the balance of the 2 years. Then you meet your 5 years. Then you have to leave the country, be offshore again to apply for the next 5 years. So if you think about it, Jan, you've got to be offshore 4 times.
Yeah. So after on the second visa after year 3, that's once again health check and so.
Correct. Yes. And there's a small amount that you would need to pay for that. The visa costs $3,000, excluding the levy fee. Okay. And you'll have to pay the health check again at the 3rd year. Then you need to start it again at the 5th year if you want to, like, for the additional 5 years.
Okay. Plus then all your travel, your flights, all those things, people got to keep this in mind. It's going to cost a few.
Yes. And the thing is, I suppose with a lot of people and a lot of South Africans, if you think about it, it's not a permanent visa. So you need to make sure that your parents have somewhere to go when they're doing that second check, at the 3-year mark. And then if you want to do another 5 years, again, they need to be out. And as I said, minimum 4 months processing time. So you're maybe looking at about 6 months with them being offshore, maybe in South Africa. So be aware that they have somewhere to go. the one thing that immigration have said is that they want these parents to maintain connection in their home country, and that's why they've introduced this.
Okay, and it's rather important that people keep this in mind as well, because I mean, this could be point one a financial expense for somebody who doesn't have a ton of money lying around. To put the parents somewhere for 6 months in South Africa is also going to cost money if you don't have family that side.
That's right. Yeah. And that's the thing everybody needs to be aware of. But if you look at it in terms of the gain, you have your parents here, you have the support, you're probably saving on childcare if you have young children, you have the family connection, and you're looking at potentially them being with you for 10 years. I think, Jan, though, it's important to remember that you have to meet the health criteria at all times.
Yeah.
And you know about the health insurance side because you have to maintain health insurance throughout this period of time. If your health insurance lapses, you potentially don't meet the conditions of the visa, and the visa can be cancelled.
Yeah.
So, Jan, you could potentially talk about the health insurance side at this point.
Well, to be quite frank, I've been all over the show with this now. So we are looking at different options currently, and we're struggling to find travel insurance. Point one, travel insurance is not going to work for this. I think of people who's got their own stuff like Discovery and that in South Africa. Discovery only covers you for 3 months offshore. And we've had a lot of travel insurances like that where Discovery covers the first 3 months and we've got to cover the next 3 months. But the problem is with any travel insurance, 3 months to 6 months is about as far as we can stretch that. And I know that immigration wants 1 year up front. So we are currently working on a plan for this. And if anybody out there has got an idea, please shout out to us. But we're currently busy with companies outside of New Zealand to try and get it that way around, because we can't do it with companies in New Zealand.
Yeah. And that's the thing, immigration will need to show that you have the health insurance and so on to be able to meet that. Now, Jan, there is an age cutoff for when health insurance is covered by providers, is that correct?
There is an age cutoff, and it depends on different providers. But as I said, the main criteria of all these providers in New Zealand is are you covered by the government health? And if the answer is no, they're not going to cover you.
Mm.
And the way that I see this visa is that people aren't going to be covered by New Zealand health.
No, and that's the thing. The most important thing on this visa, and that's why it's for such a long time, is that you cannot go into the public health system.
Yeah.
And for the sponsors out there as well, if you're sponsoring your parents, you need to know what your obligations are. So if, for instance, they need emergency medical care and so on, you are obligated to cover all this, including repatriation, flights, like even remains that needs to be taken back to South Africa if that's what you wish. That's all the obligations of the sponsor. So you can't sort of run away from that. Also, sponsors need to be in New Zealand. They can't bring their parents and then decide, oh, I want to go to Australia. If you're sponsoring your parent, you need to meet those sponsorship obligations. So just be aware that that's all the obligations you need to meet.
I've got a question here. Mariska's now popping us some questions. I know.
Is she in the other room?
She told me this morning she got a lot of people who's asking.
Perfect.
So, all right, this question asking for a friend. If they put in an expression of interest for the normal parental visa, what happens with that? Should they now apply for this new visa?
Okay, so I'm thinking that she's talking about the parent category for the residents. Yeah. So that still remains. So they're different categories altogether. Okay. So when you apply for a temporary visa, you can only hold one temporary visa at a time. So if you get this parent boost visa, that's not going to be a problem. Now, say, for instance, you have the parent category residence visa in place. Now, immigration process it and you're granted the residence visa. Then your parent boost visa will fall away because you can only hold one visa at a time.
Okay.
Now, say, for instance, you have parents who may have applied for the grandparent visitor visa that we currently have, where they're granted for 3 years and they can stay for 6 months at each time. If they apply for the parent boost visa and the parent boost visa is granted, the grandparent visitor visa will fall away.
So should keep in mind they must go back to South Africa and apply there, and then.
Yes, correct. Because even with the parent-grandparent visa, it's always applied for offshore. You can't apply for it onshore. So just be aware that that's how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If there's any other questions, guys, pop them somewhere in the comments. We'll try and put them on the screen. Not everything is available on the screen, but I can read it out. So
that's okay.
Vanita, I think at this stage we should put a word of warning out there. So I can see problems happening now.
Okay.
So to the guys, you should watch out because you could have your mother-in-law in your house at December. And then you can't get rid of her for another 3 years. So,
which is true, and so I suppose you have to think about the family dynamics of how things could change in the family.
It's one of those things that could happen.
Oh gosh. Okay, let me compose myself now, Jan. Okay.
Go to the more dangerous.
One of the questions, so immigration has a frequently asked question on their website about these visas. And I think, if you think about it, parents sometimes work well into their 70s and, they're probably asking the question, can I work on this visa?
Yeah.
Now, you can't work for a New Zealand company and obviously you can't get work rights in New Zealand, but you can work for an offshore company and be employed like the way we have the digital nomad visa.
Okay.
So it allows you to have work rights and work remotely. The only thing is there will be tax implications if you work for a period of time and so on. So you'd end up being, that dual tax comes in. So you probably need to do some investigation around how that will work. One of the other things is multiple entry. So you're allowed to travel, you're allowed to, go on holidays and come back and so on. Not a problem at all.
And you would be allowed to go to, let's say, to Rarotonga with this and come
absolutely.
back. Okay.
Yeah. So you're allowed to travel, so it's multiple entry, and they're expecting parents to travel in and out and so on and have that freedom of being able to do that. One of the things I asked you, Jan, last night was about the South African Pension Fund. And I don't know how it works in terms of when you're overseas for that period of time. And I don't know whether you have the answer for that.
I do know they check for life. They call it check for life. And that is to show that you're still alive while you're getting the pension. And that will probably mean you would have to be in South Africa in order to be able to do that. So,
do they do that annually, Jan, where they check for...
I don't know. I should have actually asked somebody because I know a few people who's getting that. But they're in South Africa. So I should have actually asked one of them how often they do that.
I thought it was sort of annually or every 2 years, but I'm not too sure. And I'm just thinking about my in-laws and, but... Again, I don't know with the tax implications how that will be with regards to accessing that money and so on. So that's something that people need to consider with regards to their pension fund.
Yeah. Well, one thing people should just remember is that the South African government is not going to pay that money into a New Zealand bank account, not at all, because that will constitute down to fraud, flat out, because you don't know who's sitting this side, who's getting the money, and so forth. So they will still need to get the money in their South African bank account. And if they need help, we've got ways and means to bring money over to New Zealand. So that's a bit cheaper than bank-to-bank transfer. So they can just reach out and we can help them with that. So.
Okay. And that's why I said I think with this visa, they will be able to open up a bank account to be able to transfer the money. Because let's face it, I mean, you're not going to rely totally on your children to support you, while you're living here. While they'll pay for accommodation and they'll do like bits and pieces, you still need your own income and you want your independence as well. So I think the government gets that.
I think they get something like 2,000 odd rand in South Africa for the government pension there. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's not going to do a lot of year. Another question from Mariska. Just to clarify, parents cannot be in New Zealand when applying for this visa. Can they apply for the visa, then come on a visitor's visa while they wait for the outcome?
Mariska, usually, and looking at the way the parent-grandparent visa works, they have to... If you recall, I said you can't hold two visas at one time. One will overwrite the other. So they would need to be offshore because they can't apply for two visas at one time. So they would need to be offshore and wait for the grant of that visa to be able to come in. So they can only apply offshore and wait for 4 to 6 months or so.
Yeah. I don't know if she's planning to bring my mother-in-law over. So
Maybe she hasn't discussed that with you, and maybe you'd have to have some firm discussions with her about it. Your
probably
problem, Jan, not my problem.
that sounds like a bit of a problem for me. So yeah.
Um, what else? There's a lot of information, and look, to be honest, I think it's available for everybody, and especially when grandparents lose touch with the grandkids and their children and so on. It is worth looking at it. And I suppose one of the things is while you're there, and if you can put your parents or put them into the pool for the parent category to get residence, then do so. And as I said, one does not affect the other.
Okay, so just a question from my side. So the grandkids can bring over the grandparents as well.
That's what's been said, and that's not quite correct. As far as I know, okay, with this visa, while they say that, you've got to show your proof of relationship to that person you are sponsoring, and if you've got residence and so on. And how can a grandchild show that this person is related to me? The only way that would work is if the grandparents have been legally adopted that grandchild, or there's some legal paperwork to show that that grandchild is related to them, because it's all about paperwork, and only parents can. So that's the only way that they can do that. So and that's obviously in a very rare circumstances. So it's mainly the parents that can sponsor their parents.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But I mean, if you know South Africa, you can get any type of paperwork underneath the table, for R1,000. Why not? Let's make a plan.
It doesn't quite work like that, because it all goes through the court systems, and then again it's assessed here by immigration to make sure they are not fraudulent documents. If they are fraudulent documents, that would be a problem.
Here's an interesting question.
Yeah.
I know where this comes from. What about when your parents hold a passport where they don't need a visitor's visa? Can they then come to New Zealand while waiting for the outcome? That's like your people that's got open visa, open passport.
They visa waived. So the thing is, Mariska, they can come on a visitor visa, but and as I said, the policy is not out. On the grant of that visa, they would need to be offshore. So say, for instance, they can go to Australia, they can go to one of the islands and wait for the grant of that visa, because immigration are likely not to grant that visa until they can see that they're offshore and they can see their travel movements. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a tough one, because you never know when immigration is going to say yes to the visa, and then you're stuck here.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. And that's a hard one. The thing is, at the end of the day, you need to meet bona fides, and you need to be a genuine applicant for that visa, and that's what it comes down to. So you can't use that visa to sort of game the system as such, because that's what people will do. And what Mariska's sort of asking is a way of gaming the system to get longer time in the country and all sorts of things. And that's not what the purpose of that visa is. And you need to meet the criteria of that visa. So that's what some people need to be aware of on that. So I'm just sorry.
If I do the application for parent now and pay my $3,000, and at the end of the day, immigration comes back and say, it's not going to happen, I'm not getting my money back.
Exactly. And that's what the thing is, and I thought about it as well. So I don't know how, usually they'll go, they assess the application, and spend considerable time on the application, and you're not eligible for a refund. And the thing is, when you look at it in all the stages they need to pass, because say, for instance, you have a healthy parent that you think that they will pass everything, and they don't fail on the insurance, for example, where they can't hold the insurance or whatever whatever that may be. I don't know if immigration are going to stage the payments in the sense that you can pay $1,000 now, apply for the visa. Once you get approval in principle, you can now pay the balance. So we know that, okay, and that's usually the way it works with the parent retirement category and the temporary retirement category. It's an approval in principle, and then you can pay the balance, or now the balance can happen. But again, I don't know. And looking at the investment they've done in the immigration system, I don't know whether that's likely or not. Our systems don't allow for staged payment. the way Australia
Okay.
does.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a tiny bit of a gamble, but I mean, normally you would know, or the parents would know if there's something wrong with it.
I think for the audience out there, it's quite important to realize that if you're planning on bringing your parent for 5 years or 10 years, and that's the plan, think about the age of the parent and the likelihood of traveling for those minimum of 4 times. It's a long flight, and you need to consider, are they going to be able to do that comfortably, and what's going to work for your family.
The other question that pops in my head, let's say the parent has got a kid in Australia.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know the Australian rules and regulations. I'm not going to go into that portion now, but would they be
Yeah.
able to go to Australia to do the medical?
Yes, absolutely, because they're offshore, and we,
Yeah.
we share the same medical system with Australia anyway. So, and there's panel physicians throughout the world anyway. So they can even go to other children that are living offshore, just so long as they're lawfully and they're able to
Okay.
wait. So they don't need to go back to South Africa. It really
Yeah.
depends on how the family. These days families are split up all over the world, to be
Oh,
honest.
yeah. Oh, yeah. But I was just
Yeah,
thinking that the medical could be a quick thing. It could be you make your appointment,
correct.
you walk in, and within a
Yes.
week you could say, "Let's go again." So
Yes, it's again the medical proving that they hold the health insurance, and maybe INZ will also check that the sponsor's still on shore. Because if you're not sort of gone to another country and you've left your parents, because a lot of people leave their parents and they become destitute here, and that's something that the system does not want.
what will happen? I'm taking a worst case scenario. Parents or the children get a better job opportunity to go to Australia, Canada, wherever else, and they leave the parents behind. And the parents now become destitute. They don't have money to leave the country at the end of the day. What now?
They can be issued a deportation liability notice and they can be deported. So, and with this visa tells you that if you don't meet the obligations and if you become an overstayer, we will deport you. So that is something that immigration will do. And they are taking that quite seriously with all the overstayers as well. So just be aware that you don't want to sort of ruin your parents' travel history and so on by doing things, and be aware that they need to stay with or remain within the conditions of their visa as well, and you need to meet your obligations.
I was going to say something about the health insurance. Don't expect that to be cheap.
Yes,
I'm,
we're
I'm being
aware.
upfront with people, and don't expect that to be cheap. Point one. Point two. Remember, you got to pay for a year. That's how I read that.
Well, yes, but the thing is, if they're issuing a visa for 3 years or close to 3 years, you would have to show that you've renewed and maintained that visa, and it's renewable by the insurance company for that period of time. So be aware that those are the costs. But I think, Jan, if you look at it long term, and if you don't want your parents being back in South Africa and they have no family support, this is actually not a very expensive way, because I mean they're not going to be paying rent there. You don't
That's
have to transfer money. All those things, and you
free
have
and
peace of
upfront cost.
mind.
Yeah.
Exactly. And living in a safer country with family support is going to extend their longevity as well. So there's a lot of benefits to this visa. It's not a negative at all, I think.
All right. I
Yeah.
think it's a question. Do you think immigration will have a limit on the amount of these visas they approve?
No, there is no quota, there's no cap, there's nothing, as long as you meet the obligations of everything, including health and character. There's no limit to this visa.
Because
You
then
can
they're not
only
really
renew it.
going to be taxing the system.
No, and if you look at it, young long term as well, if they work remotely and so on, they start paying taxes.
Yeah.
So it's a boost to our economy in a way. So it's a benefit, to the parents being here, as well as those sponsoring them. I think they're going to feel more settled. And just this morning, I heard that on Hoskins that they said net migration has decreased by 27%. So they're hoping that this visa will allow people, give them more peace of mind to be able to bring their parents and family while they're waiting for other visas, permanent visas to be approved. One other thing is, I think on people's minds is, when is immigration going to announce the pathway for trades and so on that have no pathway? That's on the skilled category. Look, we're thinking by the end of the year is when they are looking at it. And that's probably at the front of a lot of people's minds, is that they want a permanent stay, so then they can think about this visa.
Yeah.
So hopefully, maybe October, November is when it will be announced, and fingers crossed that those people will have a pathway to residence.
All right. Is there any other news that we need to talk about?
No, not at all. Reach out to Jan or myself if you're unsure. Again, as I said, the policy is not out. It's going to come out probably in August of this year, and then we can work towards it. The visa for the parent boost opens on the 29th of September. So that's probably when you want to start planning and so on for it. And we'll work on the insurance, the health insurance, and the requirements of the visa. Yeah.
Yeah, we hope we have a solution very soon. So yeah. So September is my cutoff that I should have something in hand.
Great. Awesome.
Believe it or not, we're already getting people asking for quotes.
Okay. And that's why I gave you a heads up saying this is coming as well. So, yeah. Thank you very
much. Any other words of wisdom?
Not from my side, but reach out to myself or Jan just for anything that you may need, and we're happy to help you.
Yeah. Vanita, thanks again. It's always wonderful to have you on the program. It's so informative. So this will also be available on YouTube. If you like what we're doing, please like and subscribe so that you can get all the latest gossip as fresh as they come off the press. Okay. Thanks. I'm just going to pop us out and end the program. Thanks.